Hello everybody, welcome to another video. I was requested on Twitter, which you can find a link to in the description box, to continue with the Blizzard World analysis and looking at, what possibly this map could bring and what we might be able to see on it. And if there's anybody else out there that is interested in a specific game or a specific map, please let me know and I will gladly review that for you. It helps if people are interested in things and, gives me a little bit more motivation to make videos. So definitely, if you're interested in something, let me know and I'll try to make a video on it. But there again, we're going to be reviewing Blizzard World Point B and its majesty and its random flying objects and moving bits and bolts. But overall, just a quick overview of the map. Very few health packs. They're centered around specific areas, which we can go over really quickly. We've got one here in Coast. We've got a little mini. We've got one under Pylon, I believe. Yep, a little mini right there. Going into Nexus, we've got a mega and a mini, and those are the kind of most, I would say, important ones. There's one out here in this kind of courtyard area that I could see like a flanker using, but other than that, it's kind of odd and out of place. I feel like it might have possibly at one point been a mega because it is so out in the open. So you've got to commit a little bit more to that. But overall, that's probably most of them. I'm sure I've missed one off in a corner somewhere. Forgive me if I have. But a quick overview. Very wide open. Actually, not necessarily wide open. A little narrow, but lots of different kind of spidery attack routes that you can run. You can come up onto this high ground in the attacking team. It's not an amazing angle, but gets the job done. If you need to contest the middle, which is going to be the key theme of this map, is controlling the middle for the most part, unless you're running some sort of wonky strategy, which we'll get into later on. But you can come down here with a flanker, come around, wrap around, be able to pressure the high ground again. You have great access to high ground here. If you are a flanker, you can come under Nexus. You can come through mid. You can come up on the high ground from Nexus and then drop down. You can cut over. You can wrap around the defender spawn and pressure this way. Like there's lots of little angles to come from. One that's a little bit more obscure is this kind of coastal area. I could see a Pharah using this. Similar to what a Dorado B is kind of like. You know how you can you run your Pharah Mercy off on their own, kind of leave them on an island and run them on like a very deep flank. I could see a team using this kind of fusion reactor to run a very deep Pharah flank. I think it could be interesting, but we'll get into the Pharah shenaniganry a little bit later. But dive's going to be really important here. Dive's going to be very, very good. This middle ground, this middle high ground area is shallow enough that Winston is going to have an amazing time jumping up there. Same with D.Va. I could see maybe possibly an Orisa setting up here with a soldier, or maybe even a Junkrat on the high ground to really kind of mess with people. Because the attack angles are so narrow, maybe it is going to mess with tracers a little bit more. Maybe it's going to give Sombra a hard time. It's possible. I could see a team on defense running something like an Orisa, Junkrat, Hog, something very anti-divey, because the attack paths are so narrow and tight, but there are so many of them, so I could see dive doing well there as well. So I think it's a skill matchup in a way. It's not necessarily oh, you have to run this, you have to run that. I think this is going to be very stylistic in terms of what teams want to run. I think dive's really good. I think tanks could be possibly maybe good, especially if you hold this Nexus area, and I think that's one of the more niche strategies for this map. I could really see a team abusing the fact that you have some great health packs to choose from and, incredibly tight enclosed areas and with lots of cover. So I could see triple tank Junkrat, triple tank Soldier, triple tank McCree, to even, obviously running McCree against Sombra is kind of the DPS triangle, if you want to call it that. It's very good here. It does cover the Genji option if they do want to kind of rock, paper, scissors you, because, again, Genji's not going to want to run through here, neither is Tracer. Sombra's not going to want to do it either. She's probably your best bet to come run around this really deep flank and try to get a hack off, but even then, it's very difficult. But there again, I think that's a little bit more niche. I don't necessarily think teams are going to run that, but it's a possibility, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Another niche strategy outside of dive, any form of like Genji Tracer, Genji Sombra, Sombra Tracer, stuff like that. I could see a team like London or New York running a Pharah on this map. I think there are quite a bit of just random probes flying around that are quite annoying to deal with, especially for the defenders. The siege tank gives you some interesting angles to abuse from, the pylon as well, and then again, this odd little fusion reactor and this deep flank. I think it's quite decent. I don't think it's great or amazing. I'm not entirely too sure if you can shoot rockets through here, but if you can, it's pretty good, especially over here. We'll have to see. I don't believe you can shoot rockets through there, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because if you can, I think this is much better than what it could be. And if you can't, obviously it doesn't hurt too much because you do have other angles to play from. Can you shoot? What's this angle look like? I've recorded this video like 3 or 4 times, but I haven't actually checked this angle yet. This isn't too terrible. I could see teams, I think that Zealot area with the posters, I think that's actually going to be a pretty contested spot on this map, especially for defense. So I could see a Pharah maybe peeking up and down here a little bit. Another thing that kind of supports this Pharah theory is once you roll out from point A, you do have great coverage here. So if they try to early cap you or take a very aggressive stance on this payload, you have great little pillars to hide around and to cut in and out of. Same thing when you get deeper on into point B, you can hide behind the Reign of the Black King sign fairly well and pressure the defender spawn, which is a little bit painful. Once you get the payload around this kind of courtyard area, it makes the defenders very pregnable, right? It's very easy to be able to just pressure them. Obviously, you don't even have to run the Pharah here. I think you just spam into that little choke point, their courtyard area by the balloons, and just really make their lives not very fun, right? So I think you definitely are going to see dive here. I'd be interested to see if a team wants to run a Pharah, maybe, throw a curveball. Maybe you have a Pharah specialist that you want to, abuse more and actually use their hero pool to their advantage. And potentially somebody like Florida Mayhem. I think they're probably one of the better kind of tank teams, obviously with the old Nip guys. I think they could possibly run something tanky and more focused around the Nexus experience area and really locking down those very tight and kind of ironclad areas and really setting up a really beefy death ball kind of tank comp in there. But with that being said, let's jump into some of what the Overwatch League guys are actually running and see where their minds are. Where are they headed? One team that has actually impressed me a little bit when it comes to Blizzard World Point B has been, funnily enough, the Shanghai Dragons. Yes, they have some odd holes and some very questionable decision making that they tend to do, or individuals on this team tend to do. But overall, it follows the same concept that I've been echoing. They want to control this mid ground quite a lot. They want to control this mid area. It controls the flow of the game. You're really controlling exactly where the team can and can't go, and it gives you a great pivot point to deal with that. So if the team wants to wrap around here with a dive, you can collapse in on them quite efficiently. If they want to wrap around through Nexus, you can rotate over and meet them in any of these spots quite easily, right? So you can pivot off of this really well. It's fairly defensible. You can retreat back into here by the posters. It's just an overall good area. And Shanghai looks fairly decent here. Oddly enough, the worst team in the league looks fairly okay, and I'm excited to see them progressively get better at payload maps overall. The one thing I do have to say is, what in God's green earth is Sky doing out here? He is going to get picked off twice, I believe, on this push. Both of the times I believe it's by soon, but yeah, Shanghai definitely kind of surprised me with their fundamentals on a brand new map. I would assume that they would try to incorporate some practice on other maps, and maybe this is just a concept that they're applying to all payload maps, is specifically trying to take one area and defend it. But there again, the payload hasn't moved that far. I mean, they just capped point A, and the payload for LA Valiant is kind of being staggered out. This is, again, where the defenders do get kind of punished. This defensive spawn is incredibly wide open for a tracer like Soon of Soon's caliber to really pressure you and just abuse you. Like here, look at all these attack angles you can go through. So if they're, let's say Shanghai's taking a fight on the cart, they can go here. Soon can go around here. He can go around here. He can take the high ground and shoot from above. Like, you have so many different angles to, for your tracer player to do work, and it is really going to favor that tracer play, and it's going to really favor that dive. So a team like San Francisco, for instance, you can use that Dante and that Sinatra synergy paired up with Super and really start to abuse this map and really be able to flex your kind of flankers here. A team like Los Angeles Valiant, oddly enough, they did kind of rebuild their team and really kind of fill out their bench, but overall, you're keeping your great tracer player. Agilities is no slouch on the Genji, and Fate's probably one of the better Winstons in the league. So this map actually is not entirely too bad for a lot of these teams. I think it's just going to be a lot of getting used to and really kind of understanding the concepts. But again, Sky out in the open, same place. It's a little bit strange that he's out here, but again, Shanghai is stalling the card here. Soon really isn't doing too much of anything, and Shanghai is just playing for time. I think it's a great understanding. They're not winning mechanical duels. They're not taking necessarily decisive team fights, but what they're doing is they're stalling time on the card, which is, I think, fundamental payload Overwatch, fundamental hybrid Overwatch, right? Which is really cool. I'm glad to see them actually progressing fairly well, and it gives you like a good grasp of just, fundamental point B, attacking and defending. Great tracer flanking from Soon, and great overall control of space from Shanghai Dragons. Obviously, it could be better. We need to fix Sky's positioning, but overall, fairly decent for both teams. Two other teams that I think are definitely on the watch right now, one more than the other, oddly enough, is going to be San Francisco and Seoul. Both have their own kind of styles that they try to run. I highlighted Seoul's point A defense, I believe it was, on point A, but their point B, and shows similar concepts, a little bit more refined, albeit, that echo what Shanghai was trying to do. And similarly enough, San Francisco kind of shows us what the attacking side actually wants to do, especially on this start here. So what San Francisco is going to do is they're actually going to position by the siege tank and actually use that as an anchor point to attack into the mid ground over here. What Seoul's actually going to do, and what was similar to what Shanghai had tried to do, was take a fight, if I can finagle this, in this kind of courtyard and in this general area, this kind of curved area. And what that does is, because it takes so long for this payload to come out, it gives Seoul a great time to take this forward position and actually stall the time on the clock quite a lot and stall that payload out and really burn that time down. Again, you could be looking at a potential EMP. It's a fairly open area. There's not a good, there's not a lot of places to hide from. You could potentially hide behind this pillar right here. This guy right here. You could hide behind here. In this area down here. You could hide over here as well. But overall, not necessarily a great place to take an engagement, especially if you're San Francisco. But it's a great defensible position for Seoul Dynasty, because again, you can rotate up, you can rotate, to coast, you can rotate back. There's lots of different little angles to play from. But Seoul Dynasty's big out here is this EMP. Great pressure from Sinatra to force Fleta away. He's now out of Translocator and Cloak, so the push is kind of thwarted. Not necessarily thwarted, but it's not as deadly, I would say. You're gonna have to wait for your cooldowns to come back up on Sombra. But again, great payload stalling here. Zumba taking the flank. Coalescence, a bit of a investment. It's a bit of a reach. I don't necessarily think you needed to use it, but again, Zinbo was getting a little low, out of position. Or maybe not necessarily out of position. Maybe this is a set play that Seoul likes to do, where they set up on the high ground a little bit. Let's back it up, and I'll highlight that a little bit more. And what Zunba is actually doing here is creating a pinch maneuver, or a crossfire, if you want to call it that, on the cart, and it makes it very difficult for San Francisco to kind of work around. But again, early pressure here from Seoul, and it stalls out the cart. Again, they've burned about a minute off the clock with just an aggressive play onto point A, basically. Yes, point A has been unlocked, but you're basically fighting within point A. and it's kind of interesting. It's really, really cool to see that you can do this, and it's something that we've seen on other maps that you can do in terms of specific points on the map where you can take a very aggressive position. But it seems like Blizzard World Point B, you can take an aggressive position, and Soul's showing that continuously. Again, about another minute of me talking, and the payload really hasn't moved at all. And San Francisco's having a very hard time getting through that choke point because you can't really maneuver through a lot of these angles because they're so tight. Basically, what San Francisco needs to do is they actually have to send somebody on a very long flank and take a very patient fight. They can't really play this high tempo because Soul Dynasty is in that very, very choky position that's going to be very difficult for your Tracer on the offense to get through and actually make something work. So you have to send your Tracer and your Sombra all the way around and then set up some sort of pinch and play very patient at this choke point. Similarly enough, Soul actually has a great way to kind of pressure the kind of point A area, similarly to where San Francisco would have to send their flankers. Soul can actually send Munchkin and Fleta if he was to play, a flanker as well. Obviously, he is in this map, but doesn't necessarily mean he's going to in every map. He can send them around this area to pressure the offense spawn quite heavily, and it's actually a great little way to go. Have a nice back and forth. It's going to be kind of a dark room similar to like Hollywood Point A. It's going to be that kind of flanker area that both Tracers are going to probably meet, and they're actually going to duel quite a lot. But overall, similar concepts through both of these games. One team wants to control the high ground. The other one, is a little bit more aggressive with their dive and controlling very specific points on the map. But again, it's about point control and really stalling out that time on the cart. Here we see in the LA Gladiators versus the Dallas Fuel, we see the Dallas Fuel opting for a little bit something a little bit slower, something a little bit more mid-rangey. They're looking to really get a lot of damage and kind of pocket this AKM McCree quite a bit and potentially set him up on the high ground. Obviously, McCree does very well when set up on the high ground, but Dallas has a rough time actually setting up there. I'm not entirely too sure why they don't. Why their team play is a little disjointed here. Obviously, there could be many different reasons, but you see Mickey off on his own a little bit. Again, the picture-in-picture does a great job of that. I'm not entirely too sure why AKM is on the low ground here. I feel like if the team's a little bit tighter, now we've seen that Harry Hook is actually on Mercy now, so it's like a double pocket McCree, which is very, very good. AKM is an incredibly talented McCree, but I would love for Dallas to kind of regroup a little bit here and re-engage as a group to retake this high ground and really abuse these angles. Because what I think McCree does well here is he abuses, if I can pull up my crayon, he abuses these little valleys on the map, these odd little areas, because you can actually flashbang down from those ramps really, really well. And you're kind of forcing the engagement from the LA Gladiators. And what's really popular right now is to run this McCree in response to the Sombra, and it actually does fairly well if you're zoning with your Winston and your D.Va in specific angles to force the D.Va into certain pockets and certain areas that the McCree can then take like a bit of a mix up and try to force her out of cloak. And if she does get forced out of cloak, it's very hard for her to get anything done. She needs to get in a deeper flank with cloak to allow that to work fairly well. But again, Dallas is just kind of off on their own. They're really not grouped up. They're really not trying to control any area, and it's going to show in terms of A, how long they stagger the cart, and B, how well this map goes for them, because it doesn't really, this specific point in particular doesn't really grow great for them. AKM gets picked off on his own again. He's not getting pocketed. They're running a pocket strategy here, and what I mean by pocket is they're investing a lot of resources into him. AKM, Unco, and Harry Hook, they're kind of playing as a unit. Harry Hook has two great, amazing boost targets in terms of damage and just very rapid healing, or very like safe targets to heal, and he doesn't have to like go out of his way to res, and he doesn't have to like boost around to find healing. He has Zenyatta to boost. We've seen NYXL use this very, very successfully, and he actually has AKM to boost as well. Now, what AKM gets from that is basically more damage, which means more ult charge, which means more zoning with Deadeye. And Unko similarly gets a similar boost from that. He's going to do more damage if he's damage boosted, and you know, you always want Transcendence. Transcendence is amazing. AKM also gets Discord with damage boost. You can just shred tanks. You probably just chunk Tracers out of their life. Like, they don't want to take that. I'm sure if you even damage boosted a Flashbang onto a Sombra, she's going to think twice about doing that again. It's going to hurt. But they don't take the position to do anything with this. And it's a very odd misplay from Dallas, and it shows in their bigger picture play, their macro play. They're not grouped up, they're not tight, they're not controlling key points in the map. They're not, they're not using this whole dynasty, the Shanghai Dragons strategy of taking that very aggressive positioning. They're not using the Shanghai kind of fundamentals, controlling pylon. They're kind of controlling the wrists, if you will. Yes, it's an older joke for those who remember that old video. But if you control the wrist, it is quite good. You can rotate around, you can pivot down. There's lots of different angles. It's like a chessboard, right? You control the center of the chessboard, you control the movement and the flow of the game. But Dallas just kind of folds here. They just kind of fall over and die, and it looks very easy for LAG to just kind of walk in and just take all of the good positions. They can control mid here, they can speed through the cart. Now Dallas tries to get up on top, but again, they're very out of place, and you get a huge bait on the Transcendence, and again, AKM dies. Don't know why, don't really know how, but he just flops over, and it's a big positional kind of error with Dallas on this point A defense. It's rough, it's disjointed, it's kind of all over the place. It seems to lack communication, and again, once you get it under that bridge that I talked about before, it's really difficult to get it past here. You just, like, look at these angles. You have this to work with. Anything in here just dies. It's a Bay of Pigs scenario. You just get mowed down. It's terrifying. It's real bad. But we've seen two examples of teams that have played this point fairly well, and Dallas, oddly enough, hate to scapegoat Dallas here, but they are going to be the kind of more poor example, especially on defense. And LAG is actually quite as successful on offense in picking this apart with some really well coordinated and well timed out dives with specific targets that they've identified and just pounce on. Thanks guys for watching the video. I appreciate it. Again, if you see anything that you think is interesting and you would love me to kind of break down or look at, definitely send it my way. Hit me up on Twitter at Volamel, Volamel, and leave a like and comment, all that good jazz. Click the bell if you want to hear my rambly nonsense, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video.